You were never supposed to hear this. Not now, not tonight. And definitely not after everything that already happened to you, because if you understood who you really are too early, you would have destroyed yourself trying to become it before your soul was ready. That's why the doors stayed closed. That's why the people left. That's why the silence lasted longer than you could bear. You thought God abandoned you. But what if the delay was protection? What if every confusing moment of your life was leading to this exact second? Because there is something you were never told about yourself. Something hidden beneath the pain, beneath the rejection, beneath the years where nothing made sense. And once you see it, you'll never look at your life the same way again. You've always felt different, haven't you? Not better than people. Different. Like you were born carrying something invisible nobody else could see. Even as a child, you noticed it. You could walk into a room and feel tension before anyone spoke. You could sense fake smiles. You could feel danger hiding underneath calm voices. People told you that you were too sensitive. Deep down, you knew sensitivity wasn't weakness, it was awareness, a strange awareness you never asked for. And the older you became, the stranger life started feeling. You kept losing people right when you became attached to them. Opportunities appeared, then vanished. Every time you thought your life was finally about to stabilize, something unexpected shattered the foundation beneath you. And eventually you stopped asking why. You just got tired of rebuilding, tired of hopping, tired of being strong. You watched other people move through life so easily while you carried battles nobody could see. And the hardest part, nobody understood the weight of what you survived. Some people saw your silence and called you cold. Others saw your kindness and mistook it for weakness. But they never saw the wars inside your mind. They never saw the nights you questioned your purpose. The nights you stared into darkness asking God why your life felt cursed while everyone else seemed blessed. But hear what nobody told you. The people chosen for deeper purpose almost always go through isolation before revelation. Because isolation does something terrifying. It removes the noise. And when the noise disappears, truth gets louder. That's why your life had to break apart. Not because you were forgotten. Because your old identity had to collapse before your real identity could emerge. You thought you were losing everything. But what if you were only losing what couldn't follow you into your next chapter? Think about it. How many times did you beg for certain people to stay? How many times did you chase relationships that later revealed themselves as poison? How many moments devastated you, only for you to realize later that the ending saved your life? That wasn't coincidence. That was redirection. And deep down you know it, because there were moments when something impossible happened, moments where you should have collapsed completely, but somehow survived, moments where logic said you'd never recover, but somehow you kept moving. You call it luck, but maybe heaven calls it intervention. There's a reason your story feels heavier than other people's stories, because your life was never meant to stay small. The enemy attacks hardest what carries the greatest potential. And before you dismiss that idea, look at your own history. Why did chaos surround you from such an early age? Why did betrayal become such a repeated theme? Why did you constantly attract people who drained your energy? Why did your spirit feel ancient even when you were young? Because your soul recognized something before your mind did. You were never ordinary. And ordinary lives rarely require extraordinary breaking. But yours did, because there are truths that can only be learned through suffering. Not motivational quotes, not books, not speeches, suffering, real suffering, the kind that changes your nervous system, the kind that makes you question everything, the kind that forces you to either awaken or disappear into bitterness forever. And there was a period in your life where bitterness almost won. You smiled in public while secretly dying inside. You laughed while carrying grief nobody noticed. You distracted yourself because silence forced you to confront questions you weren't ready to answer. Questions like, why do I feel disconnected from this world? Why does my spirit crave something deeper? Why do I feel like my life is leading somewhere, but I can't see where? And perhaps the most painful question of all, why would God allow this much pain if He truly loved me? That question haunted you, because when pain stretches long enough, people stop seeing it as temporary. It starts feeling permanent. You begin believing this is simply who you are now, broken, forgotten. Emotionally exhausted. But what if the breaking was never meant to destroy you? What if it was meant to reveal you? There's a reason diamonds are formed under pressure. A reason gold is purified through fire. Transformation has always looked violent before it looks beautiful. And your transformation has been brutal, not glamorous, not inspiring, brutal. There were nights nobody checked on you, moments you secretly hoped someone would notice you were falling apart. But nobody came, and that loneliness changed you. It made you more independent, more guarded, more spiritually alert, because pain sharpened your discernment. Now you notice energy immediately, you notice manipulation faster, you notice when someone's words and spirit don't match. That awareness came at a cost, but it prepared you for what's next, because there's something happening right now that you can feel but haven't fully understood yet. You're changing, not on the surface, at the deepest level. Things that once entertained you no longer satisfy you. Conversations feel empty, certain environments drain you instantly. You crave peace more than attention, truth more than validation, meaning more than distraction. That shift is not random, it's spiritual maturation. And it terrifies people who still operate from ego. Have you noticed how people started reacting differently to you lately? Some became distant, some became hostile for no clear reason, some secretly compete with you even though you never declared war. That happens when your energy begins evolving beyond the environment around you. Your presence starts exposing things without speaking. Insecure people feel exposed around authentic energy. Manipulative people feel threatened around discernment. And people addicted to superficiality become uncomfortable around depth. You don't have to announce your transformation. People feel it, even when you say nothing, especially when you say nothing. Silence has become one of your greatest weapons. Because you finally learned something dangerous. Not everybody deserves access to your soul. That lesson took years to learn, years of overgiving, years of trusting the wrong people. Years of explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. But now you see patterns faster. You recognize when someone is trying to use your empathy against you. You recognize emotional manipulation disguised as love. You recognize fake loyalty. And while this awareness sometimes makes you feel lonely, it also protects your future. Because where you're going next requires emotional clarity. The version of you being created now cannot afford old confusion. Cannot afford constant emotional chaos. Cannot afford people who feed on your energy while pretending to care about you. And the hardest truth, some people only loved the version of you they could control. The healing version of you frightens them. The confident version of you threatens them. The spiritually awakened version of you forces them to confront their own stagnation, so they resist your growth, not because you're wrong, because your evolution reminds them they refuse to evolve themselves. That's why your separation season was necessary, painful, but necessary. You needed distance from noise so you could finally hear God clearly. And if you're honest, you've heard him recently, not through voices, not through miracles falling from the sky, through conviction, through patterns, through intuition becoming sharper than ever before, through strange moments where certain messages found you exactly when you needed them, through impossible timing, through an inner knowing you can't explain logically. You're beginning to realize your life isn't random, and once that realization begins, everything changes, because then you stop interpreting pain as punishment, you start seeing it as preparation, preparation for responsibility, preparation for purpose, preparation for impact. Most people ask God for blessings, few ask whether they're prepared to carry them, because true purpose is heavy, it demands sacrifice, it demands discipline, it demands the death of your old self. And that death process is what nearly broke you. You lost old identities, old relationships, old dreams, old versions of yourself. There were moments you barely recognized who you had become, but that confusion had meaning. Caterpillars probably feel like they're dying before becoming butterflies. Transformation feels like destruction when you don't yet understand what you're becoming. And maybe that's why you've been emotionally exhausted lately. Your soul is shedding layers, layers of fear, layers of dependency, layers of insecurity, layers of performance. Because for most of your life, you performed survival instead of living truth. You became what people needed you to be. You carried emotional burdens that weren't yours. You sacrificed your peace to avoid disappointing others. And eventually your soul became tired of abandoning itself. That's the real reason everything started collapsing. Your spirit refused to continue living disconnected from its true purpose. So life began forcing change, painful change. Unavoidable change, but necessary change. And now you're standing in a strange season. A season where the old version of you is gone, but the new version hasn't fully arrived yet. That in-between season feels lonely, because people don't understand transitions. They only understand identities. When you stop fitting the role they assigned you, confusion begins. But don't mistake confusion for failure. Some of the most important seasons in life look chaotic while they're happening. Seeds look buried before they look alive. And your life right now may feel buried, but buried things grow in silence. That's why your progress hasn't needed validation. Heaven has been working underground, quietly, patiently, strategically. There are things being aligned right now that you cannot yet see, conversations happening behind doors you've never entered, opportunities moving toward you without your awareness, people being removed before they sabotage your future, protection happening invisibly. And one day you'll look back and realize certain delays were acts of mercy, because had you received some things earlier, they would have destroyed you. You weren't emotionally ready, spiritually ready, mentally ready, so God waited, not to punish you, to preserve you. That's the part people misunderstand about divine timing. Timing isn't only about receiving, it's about becoming, because blessings given to unprepared people often become burdens, and your preparation required isolation. You needed silence to confront yourself honestly, to confront your fears, your wounds, your ego, your addictions to approval, your fear of being alone, your tendency to save people while neglecting yourself. That inner work changed you forever. Now you value peace differently, you protect your energy differently, you move differently. And maybe the strangest part, you no longer crave revenge on people who hurt you. You just want distance. That's healing, real healing, not performative healing. Not fake positivity. Real healing is when your soul becomes too valuable to waste on hatred. You finally realize something profound. People can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. And many people avoid themselves completely. That's why they project, manipulate, judge, attack. It's easier to criticize light than confront darkness within themselves. But your assignment was never to become bitter. It was to become aware enough to stop shrinking yourself for acceptance. Aware enough to stop apologizing for your depth. Aware enough to stop begging for love from emotionally unavailable people. Because the truth is, your heart was never too much. You were simply giving it to people incapable of holding it properly. And that realization hurts, especially when you remember how much effort you gave, how loyal you were, how many times you forgave people who never deserved another chance. But your compassion was never weakness. It was evidence of your spirit. The problem was never your capacity to love. The problem was your inability to recognize who deserved access to that love. And now you're learning slowly, painfully, wisely, you're learning that discernment is sacred. Not everyone who enters your life is assigned to stay there. Some people arrive as lessons, some arrive as mirrors, some arrive as distractions, and a rare few arrive as destiny. Your suffering taught you how to tell the difference. That knowledge came through heartbreak, through betrayal, through disappointment. But now you carry wisdom most people spend entire lifetimes avoiding. You understand that appearances mean nothing without integrity. You understand that charisma without character becomes manipulation. You understand that words without consistency are empty. And because of this understanding, your standards changed. You no longer worship potential. You watch patterns that alone will save your future. Because many of your past wounds came from believing who people could become instead of accepting who they repeatedly showed themselves to be. Hope blinded you, love blinded you, loneliness blinded you, but pain restored your sight. Now you see clearly. And clarity changes everything. Clarity is dangerous because once you truly see something, you cannot unsee it. You cannot return to old illusions comfortably. That's why certain relationships now feel impossible to continue. Your soul outgrew them. Not from arrogance, from alignment. There are conversations you can no longer entertain, environments you can no longer tolerate, versions of yourself you can no longer become. And even though this growth feels isolating at times, it's creating space for something greater, because emptiness is often preparation for fulfillment. Rooms must be cleared before new furniture arrives, and your life has been clearing out aggressively lately. People, habits, mindsets, attachments, illusions, everything unstable is collapsing, not because your life is cursed, because your foundation is being rebuilt. Strong foundations require demolition first. And demolition is loud, messy, emotionally exhausting, but necessary. You've mistaken construction for destruction. That's why you feared this season. But if you could see your life from heaven's perspective, you'd understand something incredible. Nothing that left your life was strong enough to survive where you're headed. Nothing, not the fake friendships, not the toxic relationships, not the self-hatred, not the fear, not the small thinking. It all had to go, because your next chapter requires alignment, not survival mode, alignment. And there's a difference. Survival mode makes you reactive. Alignment makes you intentional. Survival mode keeps you chasing crumbs. Alignment teaches you to wait for what nourishes your soul. Survival mode accepts chaos because it fears loneliness. Alignment chooses peace even if it means walking alone temporarily. That's the shift happening inside you right now. You're no longer willing to betray yourself for temporary comfort. And that decision will change your entire destiny. But before your next level fully arrives, there's one final thing you must understand. Your pain was never meaningless. Every betrayal increased your discernment. Every heartbreak deepened your empathy. Every lonely season strengthened your connection to God. Every disappointment detached you from illusions. Nothing was wasted. Nothing, even the mistakes you regret, taught you something necessary. And you've been too hard on yourself about those mistakes. You replay moments wishing you knew then what you know now. But wisdom always arrives after experience. That's how growth works. Stop condemning past versions of yourself for lacking knowledge they had not yet earned. You survived with the awareness you had at the time. And despite everything, you're still here, still breathing, still searching, still evolving. That matters more than you realize. Because many people spiritually die long before physical death arrives. They surrender their curiosity, their faith, their depth, their capacity to dream. But something inside you refused to die, even when you wanted to give up, even when you felt emotionally numb. Even when your heart became exhausted from disappointment, something kept pulling you forward. That wasn't accidental. Purpose leaves fingerprints. And your entire life carries them, the strange timing, the repeated lessons, the intuitive warnings, the unexplained protection, the spiritual hunger, the feeling that your life means more than what you've seen so far. All of it points towards something greater unfolding. And maybe you've sensed it recently. A quiet anticipation, a feeling that change is near, not fantasy. Not delusion, a deep internal knowing, like your soul can feel the shift before your eyes can see it. That feeling exists for a reason, because seasons change quietly before they become visible. Winter never announces the arrival of spring, but eventually warmth returns anyway, and warmth is returning to your life, not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you finally became stronger than the darkness that once controlled you. That's the real miracle, not avoiding pain. Outgrowing the version of you that pain once dominated. You used to collapse over things you now recover from quickly. You used to beg for people you now release peacefully. You used to fear solitude. Now you sometimes crave it. That's evolution, sacred evolution. And there's another truth you need to hear. The people who underestimated you were necessary too, because they forced you to discover your value independently of external validation. If everyone had supported you immediately, you might have built your identity around applause instead of truth. So rejection became redirection again, painful, but powerful. The world often ignores people before finally recognizing them. That pattern repeats throughout history. Visionaries are misunderstood before they're celebrated. Depth intimidates shallow environments. And authenticity disrupts systems built on performance. That's why you often felt out of place. Your spirit was searching for something real in a world addicted to masks. And eventually the masks became unbearable to you. You grew tired of fake conversations, fake relationships, fake ambitions. You started craving substance, meaning truth. That craving is holy, because it signals awakening. Most people distract themselves endlessly to avoid confronting their inner emptiness. But your soul demanded more. And when souls demand more, life becomes uncomfortable until transformation begins. That discomfort you've been feeling lately, it's growth. You are stretching beyond your old emotional capacity, beyond your old identity, beyond your old limitations. And growth often feels like grief because part of you is dying while